Hello, yes, this is Ken Jones, and we are going to start the webinar now. Uh, I will do some quick introductions here. I am Ken Jones. I am head of the marketing here at the ScientiaMobile, and I have about 15 years experience working with mobile operators and telecommunications companies, deep packet inspection companies, and recently here at ScientiaMobile doing device intelligence. And on the line today, we have the VP of Innovation, John Arndt. Can you say hello?
Hi everyone.
Ah,
Hey.
excellent. And since it's radio, no one can say that I don't look like that. Okay. Moving on to just a quick agenda check here. We're going to do a little bit of an introduction here and a quick overview of what Werfel is used for. That's our device detection tool. We're also going to talk about a very interesting product that we've recently released called Image Engine. Then onto the core data where we'll talk about MOVR. MOVR, this time around, we have put together a really nice and interesting overview report, but there are some new tools that are out. We have the MOVR Visualization tool that will be available to everyone. And we also have combined the MOVR data with some World Bank data to get an interesting perspective on the age of smartphones around the world. We're going to look at the iOS 9 release and what that means in terms of the progress of the iOS operating system, but also its implications for processors underlying that. Then we'll look at app web views. This is a growing trend where applications are using browsing sessions, and we have improved our ability to detect those, and there's some interesting findings around that. We'll go through the usual reports that we do in MOVR that talk about top devices, operating systems, manufacturers, and then we'll wrap it up with a spotlight on the Malaysian market. So really quickly, just to give you some perspective on device detection and how it's used, what problems it solves. There are three major ways that device detection can be used. One is if you're getting a poor mobile experience, if things are not sized correctly, if the navigation's not correct, device detection can be very helpful in identifying the device, giving you key capabilities and attributes of that device, such that you can design and proactively deal with design issues that might come up and optimize your web experience for mobile users. Slow loading images. We'll talk about this in a second, but images make up a huge portion of any website's payload, and often they tend to be designed and rendered for a desktop view, which isn't necessarily optimal for a fast loading mobile experience. And then just the need for mobile measurements. You may want to analyze how mobile devices are performing, whether you're getting a high success rate or a high failure and abandon rate by different devices. And it might be able to indicate to you changes you might need to make technically. Device detection, the Werfel products can help you do that. One product that is very popular these days is the Werfel.js Business Edition product. You get over 20 different device capabilities. It's a high performance system in that you have the ability for browser caching, and it supports security issues like customer SSL, and it's updated weekly, so it's very easy to, there's no maintenance that's required on your end. Finally, the Image Engine. Image Engine takes our mobile device detection Werfel technology and builds upon it. We've added in automatic image resizing. where we could take the full-size image, and we can very quickly, because we know the mobile device and its size in terms of the viewport, we can very quickly take the image, reduce its size, optimize its file format, and deliver it to a mobile device using content delivery network type functionality. We cache images so that every time an image is requested, there's a quick response time. The result of this is quite striking. You get about a 60% payload reduction and a 60% improvement in your load time. And it's a fantastic product. It's getting a lot of traction. And if you want to start a trial of it, the Image Engine Lite subscription is available for you to test it out. Okay, getting on to the MOVR report. What we have done is, before we've been collecting a lot of the information that supports MOVR, and on a quarterly basis putting it together for you. What we've done is put a lot of that online now. So you don't have to wait for our quarterly reports, although I think there's a lot of value for you tuning into our webinars and listening to our voices. But there's a lot of value you can get out of the MOVR visualization tool. You can sign up for an account to get full access to the data. All you have to do is set the date ranges. You can run interactive reports here, and you can export some of the images you get and share the URLs that you generate from this report. I highly recommend you go there. Let me switch over really quickly. Hold on, whoop, and give you a quick online view of this. So this is the MOVR visualization report. You can select the regions that you want. If you're looking at manufacturers, you can zero in on manufacturers. You can look at the operating systems. And there's various ways you can view this data, whether it's with a pie chart, sunburst, or you can even look at it from a world map perspective. Very powerful tool, nice visualization, and at the end, you can get a lot of the report information in a table that you can export as a CSV file for future or further massaging. Flip back here. Okay.
If I can just interrupt you quickly, when talking about data, we can also remind the audience that all the data used in the MOVR reports are also available as JSON files.
Yeah, that's a great point. And to that end, let me, we've slightly redesigned our landing page for the MOVR report. You're going to be able to download the most recent MOVR report. On the left button here, download the infographic that has what I'll call the executive summary of the MOVR report. And as John Arne had pointed out, you still can access CSV and JSON data here. And there's also ways you can subscribe to the quarterly report and the visualization tool. All right, back to our show. All right, so one of the things we did is, following up on last quarter, we took World Bank data that looks at the income per capita in various countries around the world. We wanted to see if device attributes varied as it went with income. And one thing that we've tracked in our Werfel device detection for years now is the age of the device. And we capture this in terms of, we capture the release date of a device, and from that we can calculate its current age in terms of months. And what we found is that when we look at each individual country and we look at the average, iOS devices actually have about a longer lifespan of 36 months versus the Android average of 24 months. This is, and as you get to lower income countries, that lifespan goes up. In higher income countries, it's lower. So this indicates a couple of things, that there's a higher, a faster turnover and purchase cycle in the higher income countries, but also that there's in the lower income countries, people are holding onto devices and also probably buying in a secondary market or resale devices that are being brought into the country and are cheaper, but they're holding on to them and extending the life. So Android, being a kind of a lower cost alternative, actually has a shorter lifespan. One of the things we did is we dove into the iOS side of this and said, let's look at the mix of these different devices. And so you can see that we divided the countries up into the same system that the World Bank uses, kind of low income, middle income, and high income, and looked at the mix of different devices being used there. You can see that the iPhone 6 is probably the most popular device across all of them. But when you get to the lower income, you see a higher appearance of the iPhone 5, iPhone 4S, and 4. And when you look at compare these numbers across the income spectrum, you see that some of the older phones, there's a much higher appearance of those. This indicates that there is probably this reseller market, and the newer phones, are more prone to be used by higher income countries. Interestingly, the iPhone 6 Plus seems to have a very uniform usage across all of those, which I would probably attribute that to the more affluent portions of all these countries are opting for that uniformly across the board. Now, looking at tablets, it's a little bit different. There's still a disparity in terms of the average age. The iOS iPads tend to have a longer life cycle than the Android tablets, or an average age, I should say. But the relationship to income really isn't there. The slope coefficients of the lines that we've drawn here, I've been informed by our statistician, are really not statistically relevant, which means that there really is no relationship here for income. But still, I think that seeing the difference in the age for iOS versus Android is interesting for the tablets. Looking at iOS 9, we'll talk about this a little bit more, has had great uptake in the last several months after its release. And John Arne, you might want to jump in here. I think there's a talk about how developers think about iOS 9, and if there's an assumption out there that, oh, if I see a device that's running iOS 9, it probably has a newer processor. Well, the great thing about iOS 9 is that it's been actually pretty well adopted by a number of devices that can run it. And many of those devices don't necessarily have the latest and greatest processor. Our analysis is showing that about 35% of them are running either the A5, A5X, A6, or A6X processor across both iPhones and iPads. And so you can't necessarily assume that you're getting an A7 or A8 processor if you see an iOS 9 operating system.
It's also worth noticing that the A5 and A5X processors are actually it's the iPad Mini first generation and the iPad 2, and those tablets are among the most popular tablets out there still.
Right.
So yeah, iOS 9 doesn't necessarily mean that you have a powerful device.
Great. The next thing that we looked at in what I'll call our special reports is app web views. So app web views are browsers that are embedded within apps and spawn browsing sessions. We actually see these. Typically, we exclude them from our core MOVR report and focus on traditional browsing. But it's a rising proportion of the traffic that we are seeing. Looking a year ago in 2014, about 18% of this is actually based on iOS traffic, because we actually see the iOS app web views a little bit better. We see the same thing on the Android side, but and about the same proportions. But it's gone from 18% up to 21% over the last year, and Facebook is kind of the 900-pound gorilla here. They generate over 50% of the app web views that we identify. John, you want to add anything there, and what this means for developers?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, what's the difference between a native browser experience and a web view experience? It's quite a lot actually, because now native applications like Facebook and Twitter and other applications that open websites within the application without exiting the application and opening the Safari browser are actually new windows to the web. So we've seen quite a lot of blog posts and articles on the web lately about mobile web increasing in usage compared to native applications, and this might be one of the reasons. But there are differences between the native browsers, the Safari browser, or especially on iOS, and the web view, because the web view is a component within iOS, which is not the same rendering engine or the same way of interpreting HTML and JavaScript and so on that's in the Safari browser. So the performance is actually worse. It's like depends on how you're measuring and what you're testing, but 20-30% slower than the Safari browser. And navigational means the back button and all that might be placed differently. So you might want to reorganize your own navigation or your own page in order to account for that. And the viewport size is also different, especially the height. Usually it's the height that's different. So that means that the fold is moving. So yeah, and this is like Ken said, it's we've sort of excluded the applications that have the sole purpose of being a browser. So Chrome for iOS, UC browsers, and those kinds of browsers are excluded from the statistics, even if they actually use the web view themselves. So we will follow up on this report for our next mover, but I can give you some ballpark numbers since you've been so kind to sign up for the webinar. So if we look at the total number, both including browsers like Chrome for iOS and applications with web views like Facebook and the native browser accounts for roughly 70%. And then the last 30% is divided equally between Facebook, browser type apps like Chrome and UC browser and Opera Mini. No, sorry, not Opera Mini, but Opera. And then the last 10% is others. So that's a long tail of applications using web views.
Right. Great. All right. A quick reminder: if you have any questions as we go along, feel free to type them in, and we'll go through them at the end. Getting on to what I'll call our standard reports, where we compare various continents. We'll go through this relatively quickly. One of the interesting things that we're starting to see is that the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus have become extremely popular around the world. And the timing of this report is such that the iPhone 6S and 6, is it 6S Plus? I think it is. I can't remember where to put the S. 6S Plus haven't really made it into the top 10 lists. What we do here is we take the top 10 devices across all the different continents and combine them. So that 10 goes, in this case, to 22 devices. New to this list this quarter are the Moto G, primarily because of its popularity down in South America. They've released a second generation of that. Moto's blockbuster phone for them in South America. Some of the new Samsung Galaxy Grand Neo, Grand Prime, and their notes are there. And the Samsung S6 is new to this list. It's actually been out for almost a year now, and this is the first time we've actually seen it on a top 10 list. It was a relatively expensive phone, and hasn't had actually a great adoption relative to some of the other Samsung devices like the S5 and S4. But this is the first time we've seen it on the list. There have been some changes here. I won't go into this too much in terms of what's added on and what's dropped, but we continue to see on the Apple iPhone side kind of a drop in some of the older devices, the 5S and prior to that, and the 6 is coming on quite strong. Likewise, the Samsung S5 is picking up share, and some of the older devices, the Samsung S3 and S4, primarily the S3 has been dropping off. In terms of the trends, looking at just the iPhones, so from the launch date in mid-September, there has been a good pickup of the 6S and 6 Plus. By the end of the quarter, it was really only at about 2% for the 6S and less than 1% for the 6S Plus. But we anticipate that that's going to grow considerably. It'll be interesting to see how it compares to the 6 and 6 Plus. Also interesting is that the iPhone 6 is now the most popular device, and it has 34% of the market, the iPhone market, at the end of the quarter. Moving on to tablets, not too much new here. The iPad 2 is still kind of an old but very strong in terms of market share. The iPad Mini is coming on strong, particularly in Asia. Moving on to the trends here, you can see that the iPad Mini actually picked up a good amount of share. It seems that a lot of that has come at the expense of the Google Nexus 7 and some of the other smaller Samsung Galaxy devices. Relative to iOS 9, we talked a little bit about this when we were discussing processors, but the release of iOS 9, like some other iOS releases before, the adoption has been very quick. By the end of the quarter, we saw that 46% of users were on iOS were running the iOS 9 system. A lot of that came out of people who are on 8.4. These are people who quickly upgrade. There does seem to be, a fair number of people who are still on 7. But you note that even devices prior to 7 is actually a relatively small portion of the iPhone community, or the iOS community, I should say, at this point. looking at Android, the trends here, 4.4 is the most really popular version with 37%. 5 is picking up momentum. We finished at 24%. Excuse me. But you can see that it does not have anywhere like the adoption rate and speed that the iOS system does. So moving on to our spotlight report. Malaysia is the country we selected this time. It is a country that has about 87% of its traffic is on smartphones. Relative to the United States, that's a little bit higher in terms of percentage of overall traffic, and the tablets are actually significantly lower than what you see in the United States. Feature phones are a relatively small portion, 2% versus 3%, with Malaysia having 3%. Yeah, a lot of times in developing countries, you see that number being higher, but adoption of smartphones is picking up around the world, and the feature phone category seems to be dropping away to pretty low levels. Looking at a comparison of manufacturers, Apple in the United States has a very strong presence. In Malaysia, it has 31%, which is a lower, but not surprisingly, the Android operating system is pretty strong, which means that manufacturers like Samsung have a strong position. On the tablet side, it's pretty similar to what we see in the United States and around the world, for that matter, that Apple really dominates the tablet category. In terms of devices, the iPhone 6 is the most popular device in the United States, but it has 9% share, which is still very popular. And amongst iPhones, the iPhone 6 is the most popular device in Malaysia. Some of the things that are a little bit different is the Notes are more popular. The Samsung Note 3 and the Note 2. There's a preference for these larger phones in Malaysia. On the tablet side, the U.S. bought a whole bunch of those iPad 2s, and they're still out there. In Malaysia, there's a fair amount of iPad 2s, but really it's the iPad Mini that seems to have the most traction. On the Android the operating system side, Android and iOS are kind of the key operating systems. The Windows Phone, we're tracking this, and the Windows Phone operating system continues to dwindle down. We haven't seen any sort of reversal of that trend. In Malaysia, it's much more of a Android market, with 70% of share going to Android. And interestingly, like if you look at iOS version adoption, Malaysia is right up there with the United States. They seem to adopt just as quickly as the US some of the latest versions. The timing of this report, the 8.4 is probably the most popular iOS operating system, but there's really not a significant difference between the United States versus Malaysia. And finally, the mobile network operator usage. Malaysia has a much higher reliance on the mobile network operator for their data connectivity compared to Wi-Fi usage. And you can see that it's relatively constant, peaking at 52% for the mobile network operator usage. The U.S. has much more of a pronounced curve, peaking at 40%, which is significantly lower than the Malaysian market. Okay, so that's the end of our report. If you like what you're seeing here and you have your own website, Werfel Insight is a great tool that can allow you to analyze and produce this sort of business intelligence for yourself. And this is a tool that integrates in with a lot of the business intelligence tools that are out there. If you want more information about it, give us a call or contact us via our website. I'll open it up for questions if anybody wants to type something in. Right now I don't see any. I'll give you a couple of minutes in case you want to add anything. John Arne, did you want to add anything at this point?
No, I think you did a good job. So you covered pretty much everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one thing that I would encourage everybody to do is to take a look at the MOVR Visualization tool. It's a really interesting tool. To get full access to all the reports that are there, you do need to sign up for a account with ScientiaMobile. It's a free account, so feel free to do that in order to get access to some of the trending reports and some of the device information reports. All right, well, I'm not seeing too many more questions here. So thank you, everyone, for attending this 2015 Q3 webinar. And we will see you, well, Q4, we'll be doing this in 2016. Wow. So I'll talk to you next year. All right, thank you, John Arne.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.